The truth is, I was called when I was very, very, very young. I was probably 17, and just ignored it. People were prophesying to me and saying that they could see the calling on my life, but I didn't want to accept that. One night sitting in Bible study, I can remember this like it was yesterday, a preacher called for the text Isaiah 60. In my Bible, I turned to Isaiah 61, and the words of that scripture popped out of the page to me and became real to me. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me because He has anointed me to preach good tidings to the meek. He sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to preach liberty to the captives. I found myself just couldn't escape it. So I remember that morning, it was a Thursday morning, October the 1st, 1981. I was at home and looked like the walls closed in, and the Lord said, when are you going to obey me? And that was that morning. I said, well, Lord, I surrender. And I gave up, and I told Him I'll do whatever He wants me to do. I was just 19 years old, but ready to stop running from the Lord and His will for my life. I just asked the Lord to do me one favor, and He has been faithful to that since I've been preaching for all these years. I asked Him to never let me do it alone. 42 years, that promise of the Lord has been true. God has been faithful. Even coming here, I thought that maybe my ministry time was over, moving to Georgia. But God was faithful enough to keep me moving here and continue the ministry that He started in me. So it all started in 1981, October the 1st, about 9 a.m. that morning. I can see it as clear as day. But the weight of the world fell off me that day because I was willing to walk in obedience. My first sermon was preached in December of 1981. I announced my calling right after, October 1st. I told everyone I knew I told. But I remember studying and praying, and this, I'm not teaching a lesson. I'm putting together a sermon, the power of prayer. I preached from Acts chapter 16, Paul and Silas in the Philippian jail, and how they prayed at midnight and they praised God. And man, I talked about that. And I don't know, the first time I preached, I can remember I was a little nervous approaching the pulpit. But once I got there, I saw my loved ones, my family, and the Holy Spirit took away all those inhibitions and reservations about preaching, and He took away the fear. And I entered into that moment with boldness. Again, grateful to my uncle who pushed me out there very quickly. He didn't let me linger and tarry with it. I announced my call in October. By December, I'm up preaching, and it's been an onward journey. I just remember, and I've taken that same sermon, the power of prayer, and built my entire ministry on it because it's been the foundation of what I've lived by, my mantle, prayer. And just never forget, my pastor looked at it. I was ready, at that time, this is kind of waiting on his approval. And I didn't know if I flopped or if I made it. I just remember him coming up after me and saying, this young man seemed like he'd been preaching for years. And it was a powerful time for me. Yeah. It was, I think we all seek that moment where your Father says, this is my son, in whom I will please. And that was the affirmation I needed at that time. Yeah, man, just being accepted, approved. I worked so hard just to be the come out of obscurity in that time, man. It was God put me on a stage that I knew then that was my purpose. I found myself. I remember being maybe 6, and my brother Steve was 5. Somewhere in that age category. We were very young, little boys. And my mom would bring us to church, and we would come home and mimic the preacher. It was funny. We had this little log that we would sit on, and Steve would sit there and listen to me preach first. Now, I'd do whatever the preacher did that morning. If he hooped and hollered, jumped around, I was doing. Steve had to shout for me. That was his job. You shout for me. And then I would sit down next, and Steve would preach to me, and I would shout for him. So we took turns preaching and shouting for each other. It is amazing to me that the things we played with then have become a reality. God has me here in Georgia. Steve is in Louisiana doing a great work, an amazing work, and the things that we played with have become so purposeful in our lives today. I'm amazed by that. It started off with just playing. I never forget, man, we ran back hooping and hollering, and as kids. I won't do no more of that today, but I tell you what, it's amazing to see that has been over 50 years ago that we were playing with that, and now it's a reality. That's funny to me. Best preaching experience, probably best sermon. What's the best sermon? I don't know what the best sermon is, because I preached to large crowds. I preached to thousands of people. I remember preaching at Greater St. Stephen's Full Gospel Baptist Church in New Orleans. And I stood up, and I looked like the last owl. The person looked like there was just thousands of people in there. And of course I was nervous. And I guess somebody would deem that being your best experience. But my best experience wasn't in that large crowd. It was probably in a small setting, and most impactful to people who needed a word. Sometimes I've been to a church where they had 50 people. And the impact of what happened in that room that day was more rewarding than anything else. So I like to see the results of preaching. I can remember one incident. I was in a church in Houston, Texas. Reverend Montgomery, I don't remember the name of the church. Leo Montgomery. I happened to be in Houston. He called me and said, "Come preach with me tomorrow morning." And I did. I went by and I preached this sermon, man. I preached in a couple of places. The title of the sermon was "Don't Go There. Don't Go Back to Moab." And I preached that sermon. And maybe 6 years later, I went back to the church just to visit the pastor. And when I walked in the door, a young lady met me at the door and said, "Don't go there." And I said, "What are you talking about?" "That's what you preached the last time you were here." And that was probably more rewarding than big checks, big crowds, big whatever. That made a big impact. Like, oh, if I preach something you remembered, that's big to me. Recently, I had a young man that went to our church in New Orleans. I was young, and we all lobbied for the mic to get a chance to preach, pray, sing, do something in church. So we all got to church early sometimes just to lead devotion. You want to do something. Or while my pastor's doing offering, we're singing. Somebody's going to sing. I got a call about 2 months ago from a young man that said, "Man, my wife and I are sitting there talking about you." I said, "What are you talking about?" "We're talking about this song you used to sing." Now, we're talking about 30 years ago. So when we hear this song, it identifies with you. we can't help but think about you. I said, what? I don't sing that much anymore, so I don't. He said, I'm free. Praise the Lord, I'm free. He said, my wife and I were just sitting there thinking about you and that song and how we remember you singing it. And that was impactful because that had to be 30 years ago. That I've never been professed to be a great singer, but I put my best into it. But whatever that song was, it impacted them to the point they could remember it 30 years later. And call me on it. They called me out the clear blue right before I was going into church. They said, "Oh, we just had to call you and let you know we're still thinking about you in that song." So yeah, that's a great moment for me as well. My worst preaching experience, I'll never forget it. I can tell you what year it was in, 1988. I was in Los Angeles, California, and I went to a church, Mount Tabor Missionary Baptist Church. I was there visiting a friend of mine, Pastor E.E. Stafford. Great man of God, great friend, older gentleman, but he was always a friend, like a big brother. Very welcoming. So he found out I was in church. He said, well, I got somebody preaching at 8 o'clock and I want you to preach at 11. And I said, okay, wow, I'm honored. So I sit through the 8 o'clock service and watch the reaction to the crowd at 8 o'clock. I'm studying this crowd and I listen to the preacher that's preaching now. He really wasn't saying that much, but the people, electrified. I said, oh man, this is gonna be an easy day today. I got my preaching sermon with me today, my walking stick as we call it. And never forget this, man. I got up with really a cockiness, young, crazy, just kind of forgot to pray and just, I got this. God taught me a lesson that day. He really did. He showed me that you get out here, and there's a church full of people, about 800 people that morning. And I never forget this, man. I was clean. I was dressed to the nines. I got that part together. I'm young and my voice is clear. I'm ready to do what I got to do. I got my sermon in my head. I remember this sermon, memorize it. And I get up with my sermon and my voice clear, my good looks, and all that I think that it takes to be successful this decade. I'm certainly going to say more than this preacher at 8 o'clock. I didn't have the Lord with me that day. He showed me, never approach this by yourself. And I stood up and I talked for about 15 minutes. You could hear a pin drop in that building. And all I heard was the preacher saying, all right now. That meant to kind of bring it on in, have stage left, bring it on in, brother. All right. And when I heard that, I said, oh, Jesus, I am failing miserably. It's too late to pray. I'm out here in deep water. In the pulpit, from the chair that I'm sitting in, it's probably 6 feet, but it looked like a mile away to me. Well, and I chopped it off. And that's when I remembered, Lord, I didn't do what I need to do before I approached this assignment. I got here by myself, and I'll never, ever do that again. Because, man, I'm talking about a church full of 800 people. Here's my time to make my mark. I made a mark. I made a mark of failure. And I promise the Lord I'll never do this again. So I don't care if I'm preaching to 800 or 8. I'm going to approach it like it's a major assignment. And God, I want you to anoint me. Because that silence in that building that day, and those people looked at me like, you're really not saying anything. And we want you to sit down. It was an old Baptist church, them old folk would look at you like, you're failing, son. So, and I was, and I knew I was. And I promised the Lord I would never, ever allow that to happen again. But it was afterwards, the pastor tried to console me. It's too late. I died the death of Ahab in that pulpit. Yeah. My pull to the purpose, or what kind of drove me then, was God just kind of gave me no space to run. I wasn't keen on his voice as I am today. Young, probably a lot of things lobbying for my attention. I didn't know him like I know him today. Wasn't as mature as I am today. But I remember my passion for my calling was so pure. And I never want to lose that. It's still the highlight moment of my life, where this is what I think God's grace, I know it, he's graced me to do that he could have used anybody. So I'm forever grateful, because he didn't have to choose me. I'm from a broken family, mother doing the best she can, living in the ghetto. We don't have much, but my mother's a praying woman. A lot of negative things coming against me. I'm in an environment I could have chose to do anything opposite of this, but God kept tugging on me, pulling on me to come this way. Today, that drive is still the same, it's just a different pulling. It's to do other things on other levels and obey those pulls. I got a big answer that I give most people. How did you get here from here to there? And my answer to that, I just keep walking through open doors. When God opens a door, I just walk through it. So he doesn't have to pull me anymore like he used to. He just got to open the door, let me see that door, and I'm going through the door, because I know that every door has led me to something amazing. Back then, being young, you didn't want to, I didn't mind being in the choir, but the pulpit is a place you stand by yourself. And the other part of that is you stand there alone and you perform alone, just you and God. That's another whole dynamic to the resistance of the pull. I might stand here by myself. I don't have another tenor or baritone or another person singing with me. I'm preaching, standing with all eyes on me. Oh, that's different. But that pull has got me to where I am today, to walk in passion. I stand now alone with no problems. But now there have been other things I've had to do when I was the only one that knew what I was doing. My faith walk had to be a pull by God personally to me, but nobody else knew what that pull was. Not even my family. If I said we moved here to Fayetteville, no one knew why I was moving. Fayetteville, why Fayetteville? I just heard God. So my wife and kids and my family, even at back home, they couldn't understand why I was coming here. But I knew God was pulling me here. And you look back now, after all these years, nearly 2 decades, the pull was perfect because God knew exactly where I needed to be. So the difference then is my immaturity needed a little bit more, not pulling, but pushing. Now God can pull, and I just walk with him and go through the doors that he opens up for me. And I'm more than sure I feel something in my spirit now about things he wants me to do that's leading us to new territory and new adventures and new property and new locations. And even at this age, I still feel that pull. What makes Destiny so important to me is that we gathered people that were complete strangers to me and to each other. And hardly any family knew another family. And we came together and just put a big melting pot of people together with love. And I think that what makes this church so special to me. I pastored other churches. They were from New Orleans or from the area. They kind of knew each other or been there for a while or whatever the case may be. But these people came along when I needed them to trust me, believe in me. There was a word out saying, oh, he just come in here to, take your money and run. Don't trust him, he's from New Orleans. And people trusted me. When I shared with them my vision to do different things, they supported it financially. I have people that have been with me for 17, almost 18 years. Irreplaceable loyalty. So what makes that Destiny a little bit different than other churches, for me, it's a church that was birthed out of my vision. And not just birthed out of my vision, but in a strange land, in a place where I had to start all over again with nothing and no one. And God sent these people to me. So I look out there and I see people from every walk of life in different states and different backgrounds. I just know that was nobody but God to bless us in the way that he has. And I'm just grateful for Destiny Christian Center. I can't wait to see what the next chapter is going to be. I just know it's going to be something amazing. Honestly, Bishop was nowhere on my radar. I had a friend of mine, Bishop Quincy Carswell, that would call me every so often. Say, man, have you ever considered, allowing us to consecrate you as bishop? I'm not interested. I went through that for years with him. I'm not interested. And then one day the Lord convicted me with that. He said, how are you rejecting my promotion? I'll never forget me yielding to that. And I even again, never thought that would be my elevation to the office of bishop. It's still sometimes, mind-boggling that I am Bishop Glynn B. Allen Sr., I'm known as that today, but it was a journey. When I went for consecration, I was comfortable with it because I knew that it was God doing it, not me. Because everything about my ministry, if you find me in a place, even to my calling, I resisted it. I ran from it like Jonah. I'm not doing that. But after you run so long, God, he'll arrest you and bring you to your place. And that was a God thing, not a Glynn thing. Bishop was not on my radar, but it means a lot to me because that was another point of graduation and elevation as the Lord advances me in ministry. I take that title very seriously and do my very, very best to uphold that title. But I'm grateful for those who saw something in me. And of course, Bishop Carswell, who's no longer with us. Actually, he had a life-threatening situation right before he consecrated me, a month before. He said, I'm not gonna leave here until I consecrate you. He consecrated me in September. He passed in January. The Lord let him stay here just long enough to get me consecrated. Great man, I appreciate him. But furthermore, I'm grateful for God selecting me out of all people that he could have, millions that he could have selected to do this, but he chose me. The legacy, what I want to be remembered for is, as you go through ministry, you want to leave a legacy and start off, man, just want to grow and be known as a great preacher. It changed over the years. I'm more concentrated on how many people lives have been changed for the better, but more importantly, how many people are saved because of my preaching. My legacy is I want someone to say, I wouldn't have never met Jesus if it had not been for him. That's what I want to be remembered for, my introducing you to Jesus Christ in a very real way, and a real relationship beyond religion, beyond all the stuff that we deem as necessary, how to make you a better man, how to make women a better woman. Those things are very good, but they have no relevance if you're not saved. And my purpose is making sure folk know Jesus Christ. I'm just a traffic director. I want to point them to Christ. So when I leave here, I may not have built the largest building. I've started churches. I pastored several churches. My first church was in New Orleans, the 7-Star Missionary Baptist Church. I was 25 years old. Amazing time I had there, just learning. Next church was, I was helping my pastor with a new home church in Hammond. I became his assistant pastor and administrator. Then I got elected to the original Morning Star Baptist Church, and I pastored there from 1993 until 2000. In the course of that, I started a church called New Life, uptown New Orleans. And so I'm moving around, and I'm in my 30s at this time, and man, I'm moving and bought this nice building on the main street, and very proud of my success with that. But that's not my legacy. Buying buildings and starting ministry is not the legacy. Came here and started all over again. Moved here in 2005, started a church in 2006. And we started in a little small place, and now we are where we are today. But that's not the legacy. The legacy is not those buildings and not the times I moved and started over again. That is the platform for the legacy, because the legacy is I want people to remember my preaching of salvation and their relationship with God. It's just funny to me that I look back at 1981, here we are in 2023, 42 years. Okay, how'd I get here? It happened so quickly. Yeah, but there's an old song that says, we've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord and trusting in his word. And he's never failed me yet. So that's like a theme song for me, because 42 years, most people have given up and thrown in the towel, but I continue to do what God's called me to do. Man, don't see no ending, no finish line for this besides me finishing strong what the Lord has called me to do. I don't see like, oh, I'll retire when I'm 70. I mean, that's not far. It's up the road 8 years. I don't see 70 being my time to stop. I'll stop when I leave here. And I would finish my course like Paul, fought a good fight. I won't spend the time on the golf course like other pastors saying, well, I'll just retire and go do something. No, I'm going to exhaust my purpose. I'm not going to rust out. I'm going to wear out. So when I get through with this, I would have given God, I would have left everything on the court. I would not take anything with me. So that's why I give it all I have every time I preach.